Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today to talk about something that most of us are dealing with these days as the world gets faster and faster and we have more and more to do and more technology. As I say this, I'm looking at a computer screen and realizing my phone screen's over here. And, there are all these ways that we can be distracted. And I have a man here today who has created something called the perfect day method to help us be less overloaded and overwhelmed and to be more effective and also happier. We're also going to talk about mindfulness at work and, a bit about emotional intelligence and how this can all come into play to have you be more effective and, again, like I said, more fulfilled. So welcome, Pierre Kawan. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm very much looking forward to today, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So let me give you a quick intro for people who haven't heard of you. Pierre is the founder and principal of People on the Go, and he has more than 15 years of experience in the software industry. He's founded several companies, including a financial software company and an e-CRM company in 1995, raised several $1 million for funding rounds and completed 2 successful acquisitions. In the last few years, Pierre's interest has centered around bridging the gap between technology and people. He founded People on the Go to help corporate users manage email and digital communication tools more effectively and also be more mindful and get more work done. And founded Digital on the Go to help organizations take full advantage of the new advances in digital video and web distribution. Pierre holds a master's degree in engineering from the University of Michigan and has completed several executive education programs at the Stanford Graduate School of Management here in California. And we met at the Wisdom 2.0 Unconference. And actually, we both put a topic on the board. For those of you who don't know how unconferences work, everybody, rushes to a board and puts a topic and people go to whatever room they want to have the topic. And we both put overlapping topics. It was like mindfulness at work, and I included psychological safety. So we met there, and I was really impressed by Pierre's work and wanted to have him on to talk to you today.
Here we are.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's start with, can you give an overview of the perfect day method and how it works?
Yeah, so the perfect day method is about us being more intentional and therefore always being aware of what are we doing, how much time we're spending on what we're doing, and why are we doing it, like what's our purpose.
Wow. Okay. Even that's profound. I'm realizing how often people do things without knowing how long they're doing it, what they're even doing, right? We can be so caught up or doing 15 things at the same time. And then ultimately why we're doing it.
Yeah. So these are so important, but because we're just handling so much, we don't stop typically and think about this. We're just we're doing one thing after the next. Even before we finish what we're doing, we're already thinking, what are we going to start next?
I
Yeah.
know. I mean, I can be doing one thing, I'll copy something, to be able to paste it into an email. And then suddenly I'm doing something else. And then I realize, oh, I never finished that other thing.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the perfect 15-minute day method, which we also call PDM in abbreviation, so today we refer to it as PDM,
Great.
is basically about awareness. And in order to create that awareness, we created a scripting language almost that you can use to help you be more aware what you're doing, why you're doing it, how much time you're spending on it. And all it takes is just a journal. We also have an app. I'll mention the app later, but for now, let's just stick to the simple method of using a journal.
Yeah.
So on a journal, you would have a page that you call the now page, which is about being mindful what you're doing right now.
Right now. Okay, wait, before you go into that, can we just do a quick, I want people to have an understanding or a reason of, okay, if I'm going to take on a new method and I'm going to get a journal and I'm going to write down things, throughout the day, what have you seen the benefits be, especially because I know you work with bigger companies too, and there's collaboration between people and interruption. And so what are the benefits you see? And then let's dive into the pages.
Yeah, that's a great question. And usually, whenever we need to do something or change a habit or introduce a new method, we need to have a purpose, a reason. Like, why are we doing it? Yeah,
exactly.
So there are almost like two sides to this, two big areas of benefits that people have been reporting. And this is something, by the way, just a side note, we released this method about a couple of years ago.
Okay.
With the book. And we did a lot of testing with people. Like, what do you think? Try it out. And then over the last 2 years, we've been evolving everything based on a lot of user input. So this is not something that's kind of very new and we're trying it out.
Right. You've actually tested it.
Yeah. So the benefits that people have reported over time, they tend to fall in two different categories. So one category is the practical benefits, which are things like, now I'm able to focus much better. I'm much more aware of where I'm spending my time.
Yep.
I'm much better at estimating how long things take. I'm overcoming procrastination.
That's a big one.
Because I feel like in 15 minutes, I can start something and do 15 minutes in it instead of thinking, oh, this is a big project and I
have to work on this project and how am I ever going to do it? And then we don't start or we put it off. And
yeah. So this is one aspect which I call the productivity aspect. The other aspect of the method is more what you mentioned earlier, which is more of the emotional intelligence arena. And this is where part of the method also is to be aware what's going on inside, which is thoughts and emotions, and then becoming aware of them and having also a very structured approach to process them. That can help us become kinder to ourselves, so we're not too hard at ourselves when things don't work or when we're challenged. And then it also enables us to become more collaborative, more open to others. The benefits have been quite a few. They fall between productivity and people and so on.
That's great. I was going to say, it can seem fluffy in some ways, like, oh, we can be kinder to ourselves. And yet when I talk to my clients, one of the biggest things that holds most of us back are the judgments we have about ourselves, or, I'm not good enough for this, or I don't know how to take this on in the right way. And what if I mess up? And those actually drain a lot of energy.
Yeah, huge. They take so much of our energy and therefore our time.
Right.
So having a way, giving them space, it's not about not having them. I think sometimes there's a little bit of a belief that, oh, I shouldn't have those, or I wanna work at ways to get rid of those. It's actually more giving them some space and then moving forward.
Right. And a lot of people would think, well, I don't have time to have feelings or emotions or whatever at work. And yet your method, right, the 15-minute a day method actually helps people organize, okay, here are these chunks, these small chunks as to how to manage that so that it doesn't take over your whole day.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to go into the different pages in the journal and how that
Yeah,
works?
so back to more the practical side of the method.
Yeah.
So in the journal, one of the important pages is the now page, and this is where whenever we take on any task, even a tiny little task or a bigger task, we put it in writing, and we have a tag according to the method. We have a tag which we call the now tag. So if, let's say, I'm about to work on this proposal, I would write down now in capital letters, colon, and then proposal. So basically what I did, which may appear like so simple and trivial, actually this is not. This is a major shift in how we work. Means now we start to be very much in charge, more strategic, making decisions along the way, every step of the way, instead of the alternative, which is just finding ourselves going from one place to the next.
Right. I was just imagining myself, right? If I wrote down what I was doing, I wouldn't do the 13 things in between and then forget what I was doing.
Yeah, exactly. So our mind is just amazing and how it goes places. And, I don't know if in our conversations this came up, but Harvard did this research about the mind and how often the mind wanders. And the findings at the end were that the mind wanders 47% of the time.
47% of the time.
They followed like 2,500 people around. They gave them all these tools and apps to kind of, and be, every so often query, like, where's your mind right now? And so anyway, overall, 47% of the time.
I'm actually surprised. I was thinking you were going to say 60 or 70% of the time.
So we're better than what you thought.
Then we'd never get anything done. Wow. All right. So this is great. It allows you to actually focus instead of wandering.
Yeah. So then in addition though, after you decide that's what I'm going to work on, and that's why with this you also have more purpose, because when you decide and when you write it down, that means there's some more thought that went into it. So now you're more purposeful, and then you jot down 15 in parentheses, and you set your timer for 15 minutes. And the idea is that your intention is that you spend the next 15 minutes dedicated, fully focused on this one task.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot. I know this is going to be a big conversation here because there's a lot that can happen now, but at least you started with a good, very clear objective that your intention is to be focused for the next 15 minutes on this task.
Yeah. Right. And so many things can come up, right? When you're interrupted by someone else, or when something else happens and you get an email, or all of those things. So then you have a method for handling this.
If you want, we can dig a little deeper if you want to get into the details, what's your thought, Shana?
Well, maybe why don't you go into a little bit of, okay, so what happens when you get interrupted, and what's the other two pages that you have?
Okay, cool. So first, so let's say you started this task, you wrote down now, proposal 15, you started your timer. So our intention is to be focused on this task for 15 minutes. Let's take different scenarios. Let's say the first scenario, the good scenario. Let's say you were able to finish this task within the 15 minutes. If that's the case, you check it off. So you put little check mark next to it. And the more important part here is to pause just for a mindful moment, acknowledge that you've accomplished something. Even if it's
actually stop.
Yeah. Even if it's tiny little small thing, it doesn't matter. Just acknowledge the effort that went into it. Let that feeling sink in, and then move on to the next thing. So this little habit, which is also tiny, this is also has a huge impact, because what that means, as your day progresses, you're going to be much more feeling the accomplishment and remember the things you have been making progress on. And that's going to reflect in being more positive, feeling better, and counter the times where things don't go well, when you're challenged. So there is a balance in our life. It's not all about what we haven't done and what's outstanding and how much more time do I need to put. So we need that balance. And this translates to being more self-fulfilled, feeling more accomplished, feeling good about work. So these little things can really change how people feel about work.
I love that, especially because when I get on the phone with my business coaching clients, I always have them celebrate something first, because it's so rare that we actually stop and say, okay, I accomplished that, and now I'm going to move on to this next thing. It's more just like, got to get that, got to get done, got to get it, next. And then we feel empty and, often kind of defeated in a certain way, or burnt out at least.
Yeah, that's really cool that you start the call with the celebration, because that sets the tone and relaxes the brain. The middle part of the brain gets calmer when we look at those positive things.
Yeah. And what I love about your method too is we get to realize, we're not just a brain, right? I'm not just an intellectual robot here doing. I have a body, and I can remember that, and I can in the middle of a work day.
Yeah, nicely said. Yeah.
That's great. So now then the other scenario.
Yeah. So this is a good, happy scenario. But now let's say, and I'm gonna go through 2 or 3 scenarios. So that the next one, let's say I'm not done with the task at the 15-minute juncture. Yeah. That is just a little mindful moment to check in with myself. Mm-hmm. Is this still worth more of my time? Uh-huh. Am I on the right track? Mm-hmm. Am I productive? Is my body feeling okay? Mm-hmm. And if it's all good, I'm going to keep going.
Great.
So then another 15 minutes, basically I extend the time by 15 minutes. Uh-huh. And so basically the 15 minutes is not a deadline, which is easy sometimes to think of it as being a deadline. And then the question is, what do I want to finish? Can I really finish my task in 15 minutes? So it's not really a deadline. It's just a mindful moment. It's, am I on the right track? Should I make a change, or should I continue? And being on the right track is not only related to the task. It's back to what you said earlier. We're not just robots. It's also related to where am I right now psychologically? How am I feeling? Where is my mood? Where's my body? Do I need to stretch a little bit? Do I need to, get some air? So these are great questions. We call them like a micro reflection.
Yeah.
At that 15-minute juncture.
That's so great. And part of what I loved reading in your book too, and this might be jumping ahead so you can reel me back in, but the piece around, there are times where we are working on our own and times where we are collaborating, and that moment, it could be, okay, do I need someone else's input, or do I need more work? And I think part of the brilliance of your method is how to get many, many people who are working together to not be constantly interrupting each other and then not getting anything done, but to find ways to collaborate and do what they need to do on their own.
Yeah, very, very timely that you brought this up, Shana. Yes, absolutely. So this is also that, what's going on around me with the people I'm collaborating with? Do they need me urgently? And is this a good time for me to stop and handle that issue and then come back? So so that collaboration part of it comes also at that juncture. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great.
So, and then we'll get back to that also, because there's so much about collaboration and interruptions in the workplace. It's like a huge issue. So therefore, just to conclude on this last point, so the 15 minutes then is not a deadline. It's more of a intention and a checkpoint. If I'm okay and I'm good, I'm going to keep going. So I could work on the task 2-3 hours if I want to.
Yes.
But if I put 2 hours, I'm sure at that point, because I'm checking in along the way, I'm sure that this is worthwhile and I'm really deep and I'm producing some amazing things.
That's great, right? It's a good use of your time, as opposed to, suddenly I find myself 2 hours later and
what did I do? Was this worth my time? I put 2 hours, it should have been done in 15 minutes. Yeah. So this is one path. Now, how about when I get interrupted? Mm-hmm. So that's and interruptions is also one of those big topics. We typically really work with teams on having conversations about what's a worthwhile interruption, which interruptions should be postponed, how do you manage that collaborative effort. But no matter what we do, there will be interruptions that we cannot say no to, and therefore we have to stop our work and do them. So according to the method, we have two actually more than one, more than two, but I'll focus on a couple techniques related to that. So one of them is when I'm interrupted, I have to leave. I'm gonna put next to my now task, we have this little symbol, which is like a right arrow. So I'm gonna put that little switch symbol, we call it, so that I know that this task was not completed. So later in the day, when I look back, I know that those couple tasks there with the switch symbol are things I need to go back to. Instead of again having them, go in somewhere and not know and then
fall off of the
radar. Yeah. So, but then the other method, which is we'll see if we can explain it verbally, is something we call micro planning. So micro planning is about when we work on a task to create a little micro plan of the steps that we're going to do on this task.
Even in that 15 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's called micro, because it's like, what is it I'm going to do right now? And then I put these steps there, and these steps basically become the extension of my short-term memory. So instead of having them in my mind, now they're on paper, and therefore if I get interrupted, when I come back to this task, I know exactly where I was. I know I have all of this there. I don't have to recover and fetch all these items from my brain, from different parts of my brain.
Yes.
So I'm going to feel so much more relaxed and not overwhelmed by the interruption.
Right. I would imagine being much less frustrated if you have a path that you're on and it's right there written down in front of you versus, okay, what if I forget this, or what if I end up doing something else, right? You're still being guided in a way. Versus,
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all because of our short-term memory. And I think probably most people may have heard this little interesting fact that our short-term memory can only hold like 7 items on a good day. Which means if I'm working on this task and it's requires some depth, all these items are pretty occupied. And then if I get interrupted completely, I have to let go of them and then hold new items. And then when I'm back, I need to go back and bring back the older items. And that is exhausting for us.
And is it the capture page where you put these items that come up that you're not actually going to do right now?
Okay, so that's slightly, this is another really cool technique, which is, thank you for the reminder. So I'm going to talk about that one too.
Okay.
The plan, actually, because it's so related to the current task, it goes right on the now page underneath the task. So if I'm trying to work on this budget, and I know I need to do this and this and this. So I'll just make a quick note of those steps right on the now page.
Okay.
The capture page serves another really cool purpose, slightly different though. When I'm working on a task, and then suddenly I have this thought about another task, not related, the thought is not related to this task.
Yeah.
That's the one that I would capture on a separate page in the journal, which we call the capture page. So the capture page is like our friend waiting there. And then whenever something comes up in our mind that's just not relevant to what we're doing, instead of keeping it in our mind, which is a lot of pressure on our mind to keep these items, we just park it there.
Yes, that sounds very relieving. It reminds me of meditating and having, all those thoughts that can go through and being distracted, but just, jotting them down. So then, you're not going to forget them. Yeah.
And some people say, like, why don't I just, let's say I have this idea that came up, I'm working on the budget, and this idea that came up, and I need to send this email invite to Joan. Some people say, why don't I just go send it? And
what do you say to that? Why?
I would say once you go to send that invite, you're in email and in calendar, chances are you're not going to come back.
You're lost.
We lost into that other world. And in addition, it takes you way away from your current task, and your short-term memory needs to now unload, reload.
Right.
So I would say if your current task is important, which hopefully it is because you chose it, That means when things come up, no matter how important, and actually this is an additional little nuance, Shana, you probably enjoy. So so this, let's say I'm working on this task, and then something came up in my mind that's urgent, needs to be done. So what, according to the method, what we recommend is start a sidebar on your now page. We call it the next column. Write down what that item is in the next column and don't do it. So wait for the current 15 minutes to be done. And then you look at the next items and then you decide.
And then you reassess, right? Am I going to continue or choose that next one?
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, because what happens is most of the time these perceived urgencies, these urgencies are perceived urgencies. Like very rarely where something can't wait for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Very rarely. So that's why training ourselves instead of, jumping and immediately getting ourselves engaged into things, to calm down, just put it there, take a breath, acknowledge the feeling, this is important. Just let it sit for until you finish the 15-minute juncture. We're not going to wait for hours. Then look at it.
Yeah, I love it. I also love going back to kind of a more meta moment is that in your book you wrote, the 15 minutes is a reflection of how you relate. Was it how you relate to yourself or how you relate to life?
Yeah, pretty much. So basically, sometimes we start to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Next week I have all this planned. 6 months from now I have this planned. And we get so consumed by this future ideas and we forget that really what matters, what's going to make a difference right now is what are we going to do right now, today, and not just today, but right now.
Wow, actually now.
Yeah. So and if we become better at deciding what to do right now and become more mindful about it, anyway, we're deciding about our life because our life is the result of these cumulative efforts of daily effort that we put in.
Yeah, that's actually a really beautiful way to see it. I mean, our life is accumulation of these, however you want to break it down, in this case, these 15-minute, segments. But if we if we're checked out for any of these segments, we're not really there in our lives. So we're not getting to accomplish or enjoy. I'm imagining too, the creativity and innovation is based in our creativity. Right? If we're not able to focus, if we're getting interrupted all the time, I would imagine that part gets compromised.
Yeah, that's true. And a little bit of kind of, I think you mentioned earlier about the collaboration and accomplishment versus focus versus collaboration. I want to mention that there's actually the collaboration part and the interruptions part. That's also crucial. So we're not advocating that we only can be focused. I think as part of the method and the bigger picture, how we look at the method, we like to think that there are 3 work cycles that tend to happen in the work. So one is the cycle where we're individually working on something, and this is the focus time. And this is where we're gonna use our own capabilities and accomplish things. And then there is another cycle, which is the collaborative cycle. And this is where we're working with other people and brainstorming and meeting and doing joint working sessions and all this. And this is where interruptions are welcome. And this is where we want to be talking and we might reach out to people and do joint things. And then the third cycle is, we call it the play time, but it's actually getting energized and making sure that we have the energy and our body is okay and we're feeling good. So this is stopping and doing something that would enable us to feel better.
And would you do that for 15 minutes too, or it can be shorter, that one?
Any of those could be shorter. The only one where time where time, the 15 minutes is most applicable is the focus time.
Okay.
Yeah, so collaborative time depends on what we're collaborating on.
Uh-huh.
And then playtime depends on what you choose to do. It can be much shorter sometimes because you may not have a lot of time. But the idea is to be also mindful of which of these cycles am I in right now, or which of these cycles I want to be in right now.
Yeah.
And then working accordingly. So just wanted to mention this for two reasons. One, because you asked or you brought it up earlier, but then also so there is no so our audience are realizing that we're not just saying, okay, focus, focus, focus. Right. We're really saying to be effective, we need all three. We need to have times when we are focused, and that's where the 15-minute method comes in.
Yep.
We have times we're fully collaborative, and that's where we're more free form, we're more improvising, we're more going with the flow. And there are times where we really need to stop and take, we call it that mindful break, to get us back on track and allow us to be more, more rejuvenated.
Yeah. And what are you finding in your own company? I'm imagining people who work for you and with you are taking on this method. Yeah.
Yeah. So we basically, we have a number of ways in which this is apparent. Mm-hmm. We also, everyone, and I did mention briefly the app earlier. So we put that method into an app and also a 21-day challenge so that people get a chance to develop the habits, because this is really about habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of us here participate in the challenge and the app and building the habits. So it's our conversation is, how is that going? How are you doing with it? Okay. And we do a lot of coaching for our participants, more so in the challenge, like answering questions and giving them guidance from our own experience. So it's really something we're all experiencing.
Great. I love it. And then I'm just thinking about mindfulness too. And, I know you're passionate about mindfulness, and I'm wondering why, on a personal level, and you've brought it into the workplace.
Yeah. Mindfulness. My experience, and also just as knowing this is your field as well, Shayna, is over time, it's just neuroscience has proven, and I don't think we need neuroscience. I think my own experience shows just how much calmer and how much more reflective and how much things become easier with the practice of mindfulness. So that's why I happen to have stumbled upon meditation a long time ago. And then for me, it was more what I did, and I felt a lot of benefits from it in all the areas we mentioned. But as I started to get deeper into the productivity field and working on different methodologies and working with different organizations, I always was looking for more ways to make these benefits stick and help people be more productive, overcome the overload. And that's where it dawned on me that kind of marrying the two, like bringing a mindfulness dimension to the productivity work that we do, can be very powerful.
I can feel the power in it, rather than just the productivity without any sort of sense of the mindfulness or the body, or like there's a roboticness that can happen with the productivity if it's not actually connected to, okay, I'm a human being and there's more of me, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. Like am I mindful of myself, what's going on in my emotionally speaking, my mind and my body, and that's where we become much more, I think it's much more powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I have a program that I work with people on called Invisible Influence, and it's all of the ways that most of us don't realize we're influencing each other, beyond our words. And I'm just thinking about that. It's like, the more mindful we become of why we're doing what we're doing, And the more space we have to respond to other people we're collaborating with, right? Rather than our quick reactions or our old wounds and all of that. I mean, the more we actually can bring consciousness to all of this, the more we can create and innovate and be more productive. And then, like you also said, you get to be happier and more fulfilled because you're not so fried by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Big things. And the great thing is that to improve on all of those things, it's possible, and it can happen in small increments.
Yes.
And we get there. Like part of the mindfulness practices we do in some of the workshops, we talk about how those capabilities are all trainable. Like I talk to many people and they say, well, I'm scattered. I can never sit and just do my breathing exercise and my mind is always busy. It's okay. No matter where we start from, and this is where science comes into play. So neuroscience have shown that no matter where we start from, our brain capabilities are something that can change, which is the neuroplasticity concept. And therefore our brains, just like our muscles when we go to the gym, they start to evolve and new connections between the neurons start to form and new behaviors start to get reinforced. And we can develop these capabilities. So that's great news. Imagine if they were fixed and either you have it or you don't. That's a really good news.
That would be really disappointing if you had it or you don't, right? But that's not the case. And science is actually proving that more and more.
Yeah. So obviously if we start, if our mind is really scattered, it's going to take a little longer. Yeah. It's so rewarding to take on that challenge and say, I'm just going to start with small steps and do my whatever practice it is. And that could be the breathing, which is a great place to start, just a few minutes of breathing and focusing on the breath. And that could be evolving it into more. And this is where communities become so important and helpful, and coaches. I think what you're doing, Shana, with creating that awareness with people who want to improve.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this and for your creation. And any last thing that you want people to know? This were your last words that they would hear. What do you want them to know? But then how they can find more of you.
So my last words, I would say it's the last thing I just said, which is I think the really good news is that we all can make steps and see rewards fairly quickly when it comes to being more mindful around all the work issues, but also discovering that self-fulfillment and feeling better no matter what things happen on the outside. Even if they don't change, we still can feel better, and then we'll be in a position to make changes. So I think it's more about hope and about that it's easier than what we might think.
That's great. Thank you. And where can people go?
So a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think it was great. Have all these topics come up, and I really enjoy hearing about your experiences. So thank you.
Thank you. And let's send people to do you want to send people to your website, to your book?
Thank you. Yeah. And it's, so the website and the book, I'll give you one place where there is, quite a few things. It's hellomindful.me. So this is, we named this because we believe that there is a mindful person in every one of us.
I love that.
Yeah, we want to discover that person and nourish that mindfulness thing. So hellomindful.me/the-challenge. Actually, you don't need to remember that challenge. Once you go there, one of the tabs is the challenge. This is where people can actually participate. It's complimentary. And the next 21-day challenge, which is coming up in May. So that's one way to translate what we talked about today into small steps and habits. Perfect. Yeah, and it's complimentary. So if you go to hellomindful.me, you'll find the tab, the challenge.
Great. And I would imagine that if someone's part of a team or leading a team, they could actually bring everybody into this challenge.
That's
so
right.
They're doing it together.
That's right. yeah, which multiplies the effect. So
Awesome.
mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here
Yeah, thank
today.
you. Thank you. Have a great mindful afternoon.
You too. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.